I said no to babysitting my sister's kids, so she put them in an Uber anyway, and they almost froze to death on the wrong side of town. That sentence still tastes metallic in my mouth, like the air the night the call came in. Every time I look back on it, my memory starts in a blur of cold, the kind that doesn't just sit on your skin but crawls under it, sharp as needles. It was late on a Thursday, the kind of winter night when the city feels hollowed out. The blizzard wasn't just a warning on the news anymore, it was outside my window, dragging claws of snow across the glass of my apartment. I was standing over my drafting table, half asleep, working on design elevations for the Riverfront Civic Project, the one that could finally get my name on something that mattered, when my phone lit up with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. I was exhausted, my eyes burning, my hands trembling from too much coffee and not enough food. But something in me knew. Or maybe something in me has always known that if there's a crisis, it has a direct line to me. Is this Maya Turner? A man's voice asked. There was wind in the background, and shouting, and something like a car alarm echoing in the distance. Yes, I said, straightening up. This is Officer Reynolds with the 14th Precinct. Are you the aunt of two minors, Ella and Jonah Turner? My heart didn't just drop. It detonated. Yes, what happened? Are they okay? There was a pause. Papers shuffling. A low sigh. We found them outside the old Baxter textile warehouse. Abandoned industrial zone. Another pause. They're alive. But if the night guard hadn't found them when he did, it would have been a different call. I pressed a hand to my chest, as if that could keep it from tearing open. The Baxter district was on the opposite end of the city, miles from anywhere safe, miles from their home, miles from mine. What, how, why were they there? I stammered. Officer Reynolds hesitated. They arrived in a rideshare vehicle. Alone. Alone. In a blizzard. In summer jackets. And I knew. Before he even said her name, I knew. Your sister, he continued slowly, listed you as the pickup guardian. She told dispatch you'd refused to answer the door. I closed my eyes. My refusal to babysit, my one, single, exhausted boundary, twisted into a lie that nearly killed 2 children. I didn't know then that this moment would tear my whole life open. I didn't know it would drag my family, our history, and every buried truth into fluorescent light. All I knew was that I needed to get to those kids. Now. I grew up believing winter was something you endured quietly. You layered up, you braced, you didn't complain. That's how it was in our city and in our family. Cold was a given. You just pretended not to feel it. My parents loved telling people how resilient I'd been as a kid. They'd say it proudly at dinner parties, in that big house on the hill with the heated driveway so the snow never dared to stick. Maya's our rock, my dad would say, swirling his scotch. Always dependable. Always there when family needs her. People would smile at me like I should be flattered. No one ever asked what it cost. My older sister, Claire, was the opposite of me in every story they told. She was free-spirited, passionate, too creative to be pinned down. Those words were just pretty snow drifts covering what we all knew. Claire did whatever she wanted, and someone else paid the bill. Usually me. It started small. I was 14 when she first asked me to cover for her so she could sneak out. Just say we're in your room, watching movies, she'd whisper, half laughing, fingers already tapping on her phone to confirm plans. When she got her first DUI at 21, I was the one who drove to pick her up and talk her down before our parents found out. When she got pregnant with Ella at 25, I was the one who sat with her on the bathroom floor while she cried, not because she was scared to be a mom, but because she was scared of what pregnancy would do to her body. Our parents reacted the way they always did when life didn't match their blueprint. They pivoted. A surprise granddaughter became a branding opportunity. "We're so blessed," my mom would say, adjusting the pearl buttons of her cardigan just so. There were curated photo shoots and matching outfits and a nursery that looked like a magazine spread. Money smoothed everything over. Claire liked being photographed as a mother. She just didn't like doing the mothering. By the time Jonah was born, I was out of grad school and working as a junior architect at a mid-sized urban design firm. It felt like the opposite of my parents' world, messy, practical, grounded in public meetings and budget constraints and zoning code. I loved it. I loved turning empty land into places people could actually live and breathe in. I loved sitting at my drafting table with a cup of coffee going cold, sketching how sunlight might move through a plaza. I also loved Ella and Jonah. That part was never complicated. What was complicated was that Claire and my parents treated my life as soft, optional, rearrangeable around their needs. If I said I had a deadline, my mom would sigh and say, "Deadlines come and go. Your family is forever." If I tried to set boundaries, my dad would remind me who'd paid for my schooling, my car, the security deposit on my first apartment. "Family invests in family," he'd say, eyes hard behind his glasses. "We all do our part." By we, he meant me. The night everything broke open started like a dozen other nights where I should have known better. I'd been staying late at the firm nearly every evening for weeks. The city had put out an RFP, a request for proposals, for redeveloping a stretch of the old riverfront. It was one of those legacy projects: parks, community centers, mixed-income housing, the works. We were up against two national firms, both bigger than us, with portfolios full of glossy renderings and airport terminals. My boss, Elena, believed we had a shot if we led with authenticity, if we showed the city we actually cared about the people who'd be using those spaces. She'd handed me more responsibility than I'd ever had in my life: lead on the community plaza, the pedestrian paths, the small-scale spaces that made it all feel human. "This is your moment, Maya," she'd said. "You can do something real here." It was flattering. It was terrifying. It meant my days blurred into nights, and my nights blurred into the sound of wind hitting my apartment windows while I redlined drawings and tweaked sightlines so kids walking home from school would never have to pass a blind corner. That Thursday, the blizzard had been on the radar all day. The weather alerts chimed on everyone's phones. People in the office started peeling off early, muttering excuses about commutes and pets and kids. I stayed. I told myself I was fine. I lived in a modest but decent apartment in a transitional neighborhood, not fancy but safe, with decent plowing and a bus line nearby. At 5:12 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Claire. "Claire, hey baby sis, 2 hearts, you home tonight? I need a tiny favor." I stared at the message, feeling the familiar tug in my chest. I waited before responding. I zoomed in on the plaza layout instead. I adjusted the angle of a bench so it faced the river. A second text pinged in. "Claire, just a few hours. I have this fundraiser gala thing. Boring but important. Can you watch the kids? They adore you and it's closer to your place anyway." With the storm-folded hands I exhaled slowly. My cursor hovered over a line of text on my screen. I'd told her last week I was entering a crunch period. The proposal package was due Monday. I'd said it clearly: no evenings, no last-minute stuff. I can't. Saying it again felt both selfish and impossible. I typed, I'm at the office and I'll be working late. I really can't take them tonight, Claire. This deadline is huge for me." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then, "Claire, babe, it's fine, you can work from home. They'll be asleep half the time. I'll pick them up after." I leaned back in my chair. I imagined Ella and Jonah, bundled in coats, sitting on my sofa while I tried to finish a site diagram. I imagined them restless, bored, asking questions, wanting snacks. They were good kids, but they were 6 and 4, not houseplants. I also imagined Elena's face if I missed tomorrow's internal review. My stomach knotted. I switched from text to email. I needed a record. Not because I expected anything like what came later, but because some part of me had learned that with my family, clarity needed to be documented. At 5:19 p.m., I wrote, "Subject, tonight Claire, I'm still at the office and will be working late due to the riverfront deadline. I cannot watch the kids tonight. Please don't bring them here or send them to my place. I won't be able to take care of them. It's not safe in this weather to drag them around. We can figure out another time soon." Maya, I checked the spelling, my finger hovering over the trackpad. Then I hit send. A minute later, my email client flashed, message opened, 5:20 p.m. tiny read receipt. Proof that, at least once in my life, I had drawn a line. My phone buzzed again with a shorter, frostier text. "Claire, wow. Okay. Got it. Work comes first. As usual." My chest tightened. I started typing a reply, something about how this project might actually get me out from under the shadow of the family business, but I stopped. There was no way to explain that to someone who'd never worried about keeping a job. Instead, I put my phone face down on the desk and kept working. Outside, the snow thickened, turning the city beyond the office windows into a smear of gray and white. By the time I finally shut down my computer, it was after 9. Most of the building had gone dark. I gathered my drawings into a neat stack, slid them into my portfolio, and wrapped my scarf around my neck twice before stepping out into the hallway, then the lobby, then the teeth of the storm. The cold outside was immediate and vicious. The wind clawed at my face, forcing tears from my eyes. Snow blew in sideways, stinging every bit of exposed skin. I hunched my shoulders and hurried across the parking lot to my car, boots squeaking on the packed powder. The drive home was slow and careful, white-knuckle careful. The plows were out but losing the battle. The city I knew, with its street murals and corner diners, was gone, swallowed by white. Headlights and red taillights floated like ghosts in the blur. I was 3 blocks from my apartment, watching the wipers struggle to keep up, when my phone lit up on the dashboard with the unknown number that would drag the world of my carefully contained life and the world of my family crashing into each other. Is this Maya Turner? By the time Officer Reynolds finished explaining, my hands were shaking so hard I had to pull over. The kids. The warehouse district. The Uber. My name on some form, twisted into a lie. "Can you come down to the station?" he asked. "We need to ask you a few questions, and the children, they're asking for you." The children. Asking for me. Of course they were. "Text me the address," I said hoarsely, even though I already knew it. I'd been there once on a planning tour, walking through crumbling brick and busted windows with a hard hat on, imagining how the skeleton of the old industrial zone might be reborn as something human. 10 minutes later, I was turning away from my street, away from my warm apartment and my carefully laid out drawings, steering instead toward the fluorescent-lit core of the city's bureaucracy. Toward police reports and social workers and the shivering shapes of 2 kids who never should have been out in this cold at all. I didn't know it yet, but I wasn't just going to the station for them. I was going there for the version of myself who had been taught, her whole life, that family came first, no matter what it cost her. That night, the bill came due. The police station looked even colder than the streets outside. Not literally. Inside it was warm enough that the snow melted off my coat in seconds, dripping onto the laminate floor, but the fluorescent lights cast everything in a washed-out blue, like a place where warmth didn't belong. I walked through the glass doors feeling like I was floating above myself. A woman at the reception desk looked up at me with practiced detachment. "Name?" she asked. Maya Turner, I said, breathless. You called about my niece and nephew, Ella and Jonah. She nodded and picked up a phone. She's here, she said to whoever was on the other end, then hung up and pointed to a row of plastic chairs. Have a seat. Someone will be right out. Have a seat. As if I could sit. As if I could breathe. My legs carried me mechanically to the chairs, but I perched on the edge of one, unable to lean back. I could hear voices in the background, radio chatter, someone arguing near the intake desk, a copier grinding paper through its feed. Then a door buzzed open, and a tall officer stepped through. Snow still clung to the shoulders of his uniform. Officer Reynolds. Maya? He asked. I stood immediately. Yes. Are they okay? Can I see them? They're with medical right now, he said gently. They were showing signs of early hypothermia. We have them bundled in emergency blankets, space heaters going. They're scared, but they're responsive. My chest tightened. The idea of Ella's small mouth trembling, Jonah's chubby hands turning red and numb, it made something inside me twist painfully. Please, I said. Just, tell me what happened. What did Claire do? He studied my face for a moment, trying to measure how much I already knew. Then he motioned for me to follow him down a hallway with scuffed beige walls. Before we get into that, he began, I need you to understand that right now, we're trying to piece things together from multiple sources. The rideshare driver is being interviewed. The night guard who found the kids gave a statement. And we've spoken to your sister briefly. I swallowed. What did she say? He hesitated. We'll get there. We reached a small interview room, the kind you see on TV, minus the dramatic lighting. Just a table, 2 chairs, a camera in the corner. My pulse picked up. You're not under arrest, he said quickly, noticing my expression. But we do need to ask you some questions, and it's standard to record these interviews in cases involving minors. I sat down slowly. My hands shook when I set my gloves on the table. He clicked a button on a small recorder. This is Officer Daniel Reynolds, interviewing Maya Turner regarding the welfare of minors Ella Turner and Jonah Turner, time stamped 9:57 p.m. He sat opposite me, folding his hands. Maya, he said, voice level, your sister told us she arranged for you to babysit tonight. She said she dropped the kids off with the rideshare driver and sent them directly to you. My breath stopped. No, I said immediately. No, I told her I couldn't. I emailed her. I said it clearly. He nodded, but his expression didn't change. She said you agreed. That you must have given the driver the wrong address. Anger flared through me like a sudden burst of heat in that cold little room. I didn't. I wasn't even home. I never agreed. I warned her not to bring them. Officer Reynolds kept his voice steady. Do you have proof of that? I reached into my bag with trembling fingers, pulling out my phone. Yes, I said. I emailed her at 5:19. She opened it. I have the read receipt. I pulled up the email, showing him the bold text, I cannot watch the kids tonight. Please don't bring them here or send them to my place. He leaned in, examining it carefully. His brows drew together, just slightly, but I saw it. Can I send this to the detective on file? He asked. Yes, I said. Send everything you need. I felt myself exhale for the first time in minutes. He forwarded it, typed a note, and then turned back to me. Okay, he said. Tell me exactly where you were between 5 p.m. and 9 o'clock tonight. I told him everything. The office. The drawings. The storm. The late drive home. I offered timestamps, saved files, login records, badge swipes from the office building. He typed while I spoke, nodding occasionally. When I finished, he let out a slow breath. The kids were found at 8:42 p.m., he said. The Uber driver dropped them off at the wrong location around 8:30. According to him, your sister entered the destination address herself. My stomach twisted. What address did she put in? He pulled out a printout. 1468 Lowell Street. The Baxter Industrial Zone. I stared at him. How could she think that was my address? She said, again, this is her claim, that you moved recently. That she saved your new address from a text you sent. I never moved, I said flatly. I've lived in the same place for 3 years. Officer Reynolds nodded slowly. We're starting to see that. He pushed his chair back. Let me check on the kids' status. I'll bring you back if they're ready for a visitor. He stood and stepped out. When the door closed, I pressed my palms against my eyes and let out a sound I didn't know was sitting in my throat. My whole body shook with it. Not because I was afraid of being arrested, or accused, or humiliated. Because Ella and Jonah were somewhere in this building, wrapped in emergency blankets, scared, asking where I was. And I had no idea why my sister would rather lie than admit she wanted to go to a gala. A minute later, the door opened. A different officer stepped in, a woman with dark hair pulled into a low bun. Maya? I'm Officer Valdez. They're asking for you. I stood so fast the chair legs screeched on the floor. She led me through a different hallway, past a vending machine buzzing loudly, past a whiteboard with notes scribbled in marker. Finally we reached a room labeled Medical Holding. Inside, 2 small shapes were seated on cots, wrapped in layers of foil-like emergency blankets that crinkled softly when they moved. A young paramedic crouched beside them, checking their vitals. Ella? I whispered. Her head snapped up. Her eyes were red-rimmed, cheeks blotchy from cold and tears. Auntie Maya, she cried. She scrambled off the cot and collided into me. I knelt, wrapping my arms around her, feeling her shaking body press into mine. Her jacket was a cheap, thin thing, something meant for fall weather, not this. Her hair smelled like cold metal. Maya, Jonah mumbled from behind her, his lower lip trembling. I reached for him too, pulling him close. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. I wanted to collapse. But instead I held them and said, "You're okay. You're safe now. I'm here." After a moment, the paramedic cleared her throat gently. They'll need warm fluids soon. But they're stable. I nodded, forcing myself to release them. Ella wiped her face with the back of her hand. Mommy said we were going to your house, she said. But the driver dropped us off somewhere scary and left. My throat tightened. I know, I said softly. I'm so sorry. That never should have happened. Mommy said you wanted us, Jonah whispered, shivering slightly. I closed my eyes. Claire's lie was now in their little mouths. Before I could answer, the door opened again. And my parents swept in like a gust of expensive perfume and cold air. My father was still in his suit, scarf hanging perfectly around his neck. My mother wore a fur-lined coat and a tight expression that reminded me of every childhood memory where image mattered more than truth. Oh, thank God, my mother said, rushing past me to check Ella's hair, Jonah's hands. My poor babies. What a nightmare. My father turned to Officer Valdez. We'll need a private room immediately, he said, as if this were a hotel. This is a delicate family issue. We'll handle it. Officer Valdez raised an eyebrow. Sir, the children are in police custody until further evaluation. You can stay with them, but you cannot remove them from the facility. Ridiculous, my father snapped. You people don't understand who you're talking to. I felt my jaw clench. Dad, I said under my breath. He ignored me. My mother finally looked at me, relief and accusation tangled in her expression. Maya, she said, why didn't you just take them when Claire asked? You know she struggles. You know how important this gala was. I stared at her, stunned. Mom. I said no. I warned her not to bring them. I sent her an email. Well, clearly something got mixed up, she said, waving her hand. No need to escalate. The important thing, Officer Valdez cut in sharply, is that 2 minors were found nearly frozen to death in an abandoned industrial area. This is not a family squabble. CPS is en route. My parents stiffened. My father turned slowly toward me, his eyes cold. Maya, he said. We need to present a unified story. Your sister told police you miscommunicated the address. It'll be easiest if you tell the truth. I said flatly. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Tell the story that keeps this family from being dragged through the mud. I felt something inside me, something small and overburdened, begin to crack. Before I could respond, Officer Valdez said, Ms. Turner, Mr. Turner, we'll need you all outside while the children finish their medical evaluation. She ushered us gently out of the room. The kids looked at me as the door closed, confusion written across their exhausted faces. My father rounded on me immediately. We are fixing this tonight. Do you understand? He said. Your sister panicked. The drivers are unreliable. The storm created confusion. The police are overreacting. So you'll tell them, no, I said. He blinked. Excuse me? No, I repeated. I'm not lying. My mother stepped between us. Sweetheart, think of your sister. Think of the family. This could ruin everything. It almost killed them, I shot back. My parents froze. And standing there, in the hallway of a police station, with my coat dripping meltwater onto the floor, I realized, this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was my family acting exactly as they always had, protecting the image at any cost, even while the real cracks widened beneath them. And tonight, those cracks had nearly swallowed 2 innocent children whole. This was the first time I ever said no and meant it. It would not be the last. The CPS worker arrived about 20 minutes later, a woman in her early 40s with a thick wool coat and a clipboard tucked under one arm. She introduced herself as Mrs. Halpern, her voice steady and calm, the kind of practiced calm that tells you she's seen far worse than whatever your family is about to deny. My parents immediately straightened their posture, turned on their polished smiles, and tried to shake her hand as if she were an investor rather than a mandatory reporter in a crisis. She barely acknowledged them. Instead, she turned to me. You're Maya? She asked. Yes, I said, surprised she'd started with me. I've read the preliminary statements and seen the timeline, she said quietly. We'll talk in a moment. First, I need to speak to the children. My mother stepped forward. We'll come with you. No, Mrs. Halpern said firmly. They need to speak alone with CPS personnel. My mother blinked as if slapped. But, we are the grandparents. And this is a welfare investigation, Halpern said, with the weary professionalism of someone who had said the same sentence 100 times to people who thought rules did not apply to them. She disappeared into the medical room. The door shut. My parents turned to me instantly. This is bad, my father whispered, adjusting his coat like he was preparing for a press conference. This is very, very bad. For them, I said. For the kids. He gave me a sharp look, the kind I used to get when I didn't smile enough at dinner parties. Maya, you're not thinking about the bigger picture. Your sister is a public figure. She has followers. She has brand partnerships. A CPS case could become a scandal. She put her kids in an Uber in a blizzard, I snapped. She's lucky they're alive. That's not proven, he said. It doesn't need to be proven, I said. They were there. They were freezing. And she lied. My mother crossed her arms. You are being dramatic. Claire said you agreed. You know how stressed she gets before events. She was drunk, I said. Or buzzed. Or something. I know the signs. She didn't check the address. She didn't even put coats on them. A muscle in my father's jaw tightened. Lower your voice. Why? I demanded. So people don't hear the truth? So people don't misunderstand the truth, he snapped. This is exactly why we need a unified story. The worse this looks for Claire, the worse it looks for all of us. I stared at him. He wasn't even pretending to care about Ella and Jonah. Not even a little. Before I could answer, the door to the medical room opened again. Ella and Jonah shuffled out with Mrs. Halpern behind them. Miss Turner, she said, looking at me. Could you step with me for a moment? I nodded, glancing back at the kids. They looked more stable now, faces a bit pinker, wrapped in proper fleece blankets instead of the metallic emergency ones. A paramedic handed them little styrofoam cups of warm broth. For the first time since arriving, I breathed. I followed the CPS worker into a small conference room. She closed the door behind us. They asked for you repeatedly, she said. Both of them said you're who they call when they're scared. That hit me harder than it should have. She sat across from me. Maya. I'm going to be straightforward. What happened tonight is considered severe neglect. Potentially criminal neglect. I swallowed. We have statements from the night guard who found them, she continued. He said Jonah was crying so hard he could barely talk. Ella told him her hands hurt. They were underdressed for the weather. No gloves, no scarves. And they were alone. In an active blizzard. I pressed my hands together tightly. We also have the rideshare driver's preliminary statement, she said. He said your sister appeared intoxicated. He also says she told him you were waiting at the destination. She wasn't intoxicated, I said automatically. Then I stopped. That wasn't true. Claire loved her pre-gala cocktails. She treated them like accessories. She wasn't sober, I corrected. Mrs. Halpern nodded. We will verify. We'll also request access to the family's home security footage. Good. Finally, something objective. She continued. The initial police report lists you as a possible involved party because your name was used with the rideshare service. My stomach dropped. Used how? The app's log shows that your sister changed the pickup guardian field to your name, saying you were awaiting their arrival. I closed my eyes. The audacity. The entitlement. The way she always assumed I'd clean up her messes. We've forwarded your email to the detectives, she said. It helps clarify your position. Very much. I nodded, grateful I had documented something for once. But I have to ask you this directly, she said. Is tonight the first time you've had concerns about your sister's parenting? I hesitated. And in that hesitation, years of small moments flickered through my mind, moments I'd brushed aside because calling them out would have made me the antagonist. Moments like, Claire pouring wine at 11 a.m. on a Saturday. Claire leaving Ella with me for an hour that turned into 6. Claire forgetting Jonah's preschool pickup and blaming Google Calendar. Claire insisting the kids didn't need hats, or sunscreen, or bedtime. And times I'd said nothing. I looked up at the CPS worker. No. It's not the first time. She nodded slowly. Thank you for being honest. She slid a form across the table. Until we complete a full assessment, the children cannot return to their mother. Their father is listed as a legal guardian. He is being notified and is on his way. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Good. They'll be safe with him. Her eyes softened. He said the same about you, in his phone interview. I blinked. He did. He said you're the only one in the family he trusts. I felt something warm flood through me, something like relief and grief tangled together. Then my phone buzzed loudly against the table. It was my father. Then my mother. Then my sister. 3 missed calls. Then 3 texts. Dad, we need to talk. Urgent. Meet us in the hallway. Mom, come now. Do not say anything else to CPS. Claire, what did you tell them? Fix this now. My stomach twisted. The storm outside was howling against the station windows, but it felt like the real storm was in my phone. I exhaled and turned it off. When I stepped out of the conference room, my parents were waiting, their faces pinched with outrage. Claire wasn't there yet, she didn't know the full situation, but their posture told me they were preparing for battle. My mother stepped toward me, her voice low but sharp. What did you tell CPS? The truth, I said. She stiffened. Maya. You're not a child. Think. This could lead to charges. For your sister. For the family. Then she shouldn't have done what she did. My father stepped in front of me, blocking my path. We have, he lowered his voice even further, a solution. I felt the old dread in my stomach. The tone that meant negotiation masquerading as family unity. What kind of solution? I asked cautiously. He took a folded piece of paper from his coat pocket and pressed it into my hand. A check. With more zeros than I had ever seen attached to my name. Maya, he said, as if coaxing a child, this is enough to pay off your student loans. Your car. Even put a down payment on a home. I stared at it, unblinking. In exchange, he said, you'll adjust your statement. Tell CPS the Uber driver must have mixed up addresses. Say you told Claire you'd watch the kids but you miscommunicated your availability. We can still fix this. I let the check hang between my fingers. You're asking me to lie, I said quietly. We're asking you to protect your family, my mother corrected. The media will eat this alive. Your father's company can't afford this kind of scandal. Ah. There it was. The true priority. My father took a step closer. If you don't help us, we will all suffer. Including you. Your career. Your future. Something inside me snapped so quietly it almost sounded like a breath. I pressed the check back into his chest. I'm not for sale. He grabbed my wrist. Maya, let go, I said. He did, but only because Officer Reynolds approached us at that moment. Everything okay here? He asked. My father flashed his CEO smile. Just a family discussion. His tone made it sound wholesome. Mine made it sound like a threat. Yes, I said. We're good. My parents stepped away, murmuring angrily to each other. Reynolds turned to me. Just so you're aware, the children's father is arriving soon. And your sister is on her way as well. The weight of that sentence sank into me. Claire was coming. With her dramatics. With her lies. and with a story she'd already rehearsed to save herself. A wave of fatigue washed through me. I was tired of being the quiet one. The reliable one. The one who absorbed impact. No more. "Officer," I said, "do you have somewhere I can make a private call? I need to contact my boss about what's happening." He nodded. "Sure. Follow me." Before I followed, though, I reached into my coat pocket and flicked off the little slider on my phone that said, "Voice memos, recording, paused." I had recorded everything my parents said. Their bribe. Their demand for perjury. Their instructions to blame me. A part of me mourned that it had come to this. The other part felt something new, something steady. A spine. As I followed Officer Reynolds down the hallway, I glanced back once through the glass window of the medical room. Ella and Jonah were sipping broth. Their little faces looked calmer. Safer. I wasn't just going to tell the truth. I was going to protect them. Even if it meant burning down the entire facade my family had spent years constructing. Officer Reynolds led me to a small side office, really just a converted storage room with a desk, a phone, and a bulletin board covered in outdated safety posters. It was quiet, insulated from the noise of the main intake area. I sat down, hands still trembling slightly, and dialed Elena. She picked up on the second ring. "Maya," she said immediately, voice alert. "It's late. Are you okay?" I swallowed hard. "No. Something happened with my sister's kids. I'm at the police station. It's bad." There was a pause, but not the kind I feared. Not the "this is inconvenient" kind. More like the "I'm listening" kind. "Tell me," she said. So I did. I kept it brief, factual, just the bones of the chaos, the blizzard, the Uber, the kids nearly freezing, CPS involvement, my parents trying to buy my silence. When I finished, I braced myself for disappointment. For her to say she needed me back at the office in the morning. For her to suggest that maybe I should try to de-escalate things with my family. But she didn't. Instead, she exhaled sharply. "Jesus, Maya. I'm so sorry." I blinked. "I know I'm in the middle of the project, and I don't want this to affect." "No," she cut in. "Stop right there. This is a crisis. A real one. Work can wait." Relief hit me so hard I almost slumped. "I don't want you worrying about deadlines," she continued. "We can shift the review meeting. And if your family tries anything to threaten your position here," her voice sharpened, "they'll find out very quickly that we protect our people." That was not what I expected. Not from anyone, let alone my boss. "Elena," I said quietly, "my father, he used my job as leverage tonight. He said the company might pull a major contract if the firm keeps me on." She was silent for one beat. Two. Then, "Good. Let him try." I sat straight up. "What?" "We don't bow to intimidation," she said. "And if he contacts anyone here again with threats, you tell me. Directly. We have legal counsel on retainer." My breath caught. She wasn't just saying this to be kind. She meant it. "Maya," she added, her tone softening, "I've always known you carry more weight on your shoulders than you admit. I don't know all the details, but someone like you doesn't turn out hyper-competent and self-sacrificing without a reason." A lump formed in my throat. I pressed my fingers to my eyes. "You take the time you need," she said. "I'll email HR to make it official. Full pay. No questions." "Elena," my voice cracked. "You're not alone," she said gently. "And you don't have to protect people who wouldn't protect you. I nodded even though she couldn't see it. Thank you, I whispered. Really? We'll get through the project, she said. And you? You focus on the kids. And on telling the truth. The line clicked softly as she ended the call. For a moment I sat there, stunned. All day I had carried the dread that my family's chaos would destroy everything I'd worked for. That my father's connections could crush my career as easily as pressing a button. But the opposite had happened. My job, my one refuge, had become the first solid support I'd felt all night. It was like someone had quietly handed me armor. I wiped my face with the back of my hand, took a shaky breath, and stepped out of the office. As soon as I returned to the hallway, I heard shouting. Claire had arrived. I found her near the main desk, hair perfect despite the storm, wrapped in a designer coat, mascara smudged just enough to look dramatic. She practically ran toward my parents. Oh my God, she sobbed, voice loud enough to echo. Where are my babies? Why won't they let me see them? I need my children. My father put an arm around her. We're handling it, he said soothingly. Your sister complicated things. Claire rounded on me instantly. What did you tell them? The officers in earshot turned their heads. I held her gaze. I told them the truth. Her expression twisted. You're doing this because you're jealous. I almost laughed. Jealous of what? Your negligence? My social media is blowing up already, she said, voice rising. People are asking why I'm not posting from the gala. And now the cops are involved? What did you do? Claire, I said, you put your kids in an Uber during a blizzard. Alone. Without coats. They were found in an abandoned industrial area. You lied and used my name. That's what happened. Her chest heaved. Oh, please. They were fine. Children are resilient. And if the driver wasn't so incompetent, stop, Officer Valdez snapped, stepping between us. Miss Turner, you are being investigated for child endangerment. You need to lower your voice and wait for the children's father to arrive. Claire scoffed and folded her arms like a teenager who'd been grounded. But she didn't stop glaring at me. Not when Jonah's father arrived, pale and frantic, rushing to see the kids. Not when CPS escorted him into the evaluation room. Not when officers informed her she would not be allowed in. She stood there shaking, not from cold, but from the shock of a world where consequences actually applied. Then she pulled out her phone. I didn't pay attention at first, until I heard the trembling, rehearsed tone of her victim voice. Oh my God, guys, she said loudly into the camera, I'm at the police station and my sister is turning CPS against me. Officer Reynolds moved quickly. Ma'am, you need to stop recording inside the precinct. She ignored him. She's always been jealous because I'm the successful one, and now she's punishing me through my children. That's enough, Reynolds said, taking a step forward. Claire spun away, clutching her phone, live stream still running. This is so unfair, she wailed to her audience. She's making me look like a bad mother. She doesn't have to make you look like anything, I said quietly. You did that yourself. Claire screamed in frustration and stormed out into the hallway, still broadcasting. And within minutes, I could see it coming, her followers would spread it. Our extended relatives. Her mommy influencer circle. A smear campaign. Against me. The girl who always stayed quiet. Not anymore. I watched her silhouette vanish around the corner, the sound of her complaints trailing behind her. And at that moment, I knew something with absolute clarity. Her meltdown, her lies, her attempts to weaponize social media, all of it was being recorded. All of it was evidence. And all of it was about to snap back on her with a force she'd never experienced in her curated, consequence-free life. Because the world she'd built on filters and pretense could not withstand reality. And reality, finally, was on my side. It was close to midnight when the first real quiet settled over the station. The kind of quiet that only comes after a storm of chaos, when the shouting is done, when the paramedics have left, when the initial adrenaline has burned itself clean through you. Ella and Jonah were finally asleep on cots in a supervised room with their father. CPS had approved him as the temporary guardian for the night. He'd thanked me, voice raw, like he didn't quite know how to process everything. His eyes had shone with horror and shame, not at anything I'd done, but at the reality of who he'd married and what he'd missed until now. My parents were still somewhere in the building, arguing softly, strategizing, trapped in the realization that this scandal was slipping out of their control. Claire had been escorted to a separate waiting room, where she alternated between crying to her followers and hurling insults at the officers who told her to stop streaming. Eventually they took her phone away. I stayed near the hallway outside the CPS offices, waiting for updates. Waiting for the next blow. Waiting, and thinking. It was nearly 12:30 a.m. when Detective Shaw approached me with a small folder in his hand. "Maya?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I said, bracing. He motioned me into a small conference room. "I think you need to see this." The room felt colder than before. The walls seemed to sharpen. I sat slowly. He placed the folder in front of me. "This came in about 10 minutes ago." The children's father forwarded home security footage from earlier this evening. My breath caught. "Footage of your sister putting the children into the Uber." I clasped my hands tightly. "We reviewed it," he said. "It's damning." I swallowed. "Show me." He slid his laptop around, pressed play. The video was grainy, but clear enough. It showed Claire stepping out of her house in a shimmering dress, high heels clicking sharply on the patio stone. In one hand she held a champagne flute. In the other, her phone. She wasn't wearing a coat. She didn't look rushed or stressed. She looked annoyed, at the cold, at the kids bundled around her legs, at the fact that the Uber wasn't exactly parallel to the walkway. Jonah stumbled behind her, wearing a thin hoodie. Ella trailed after them, no gloves, hair whipping in the wind. Claire didn't even look back. She opened the Uber door, gestured vaguely toward the back seat, and the kids climbed in. She didn't buckle them. She didn't lean down to talk to the driver. She didn't check the destination. She just shut the door. Then she took a sip of champagne and walked back inside, only pausing to fix her hair in the reflection of the glass door. I covered my mouth with a hand. "Pause," I whispered. The detective did. On the screen, in the frozen frame, Claire looked bored. Utterly disconnected from the tiny bodies she'd just sent out into a storm. A hollow pit opened in my stomach. "This alone constitutes criminal negligence," Detective Shaw said quietly. "Combined with the location they were dropped off at, the weather, and the lies, it's extremely serious. The DA's office will likely get involved." My pulse thudded in my ears. "This video," he added, "along with your email, proves your account is accurate." I nodded shakily. He paused, studying me. "There's something else." I looked up. "We also received an audio file emailed from your work account." "A recording." My chest tightened. "Is it?" He opened the file. My father's voice filled the room. "You'll adjust your statement. Tell CPS it was a miscommunication. We can still fix this." Then my mother, "Think of your sister. Think of the family. The media will destroy us if you don't help." Then my father again, lower, cold, "If you don't help us, we all suffer. Including you. Your career. Your future. Detective Shaw clicked pause. My throat tightened. I sent it, I whispered. I recorded it. You needed to have it. He nodded. I know this wasn't easy. But it's important. It shows attempted witness tampering, coercion, and obstruction. I exhaled a long, trembling breath. They're my parents. I know, he said gently. But they put you in a dangerous position. They tried to push you into perjury. Recording them may have saved your career, and frankly, helped protect the children. I rubbed my forehead. Look, he continued, CPS will make recommendations shortly. But between the footage, your email, the rideshare logs, the guard statement, and your recording, this case is shifting quickly. He leaned back, folding his arms. If all of this holds, your sister will likely face supervised visitation, mandatory rehabilitation, and possibly charges. And my parents? I asked quietly. That's not my call. But they may face legal consequences depending on how the DA views their actions. Regardless, they will not be considered credible influences in the custody process. I stared down at my shaking hands. For years I had tried to keep the peace. To be the fixer. To be the reliable one. And now? Now the truth was laid bare. Not because I said anything exaggerated or dramatic. But because the evidence finally spoke louder than all the years of denial. Detective Shaw closed the folder. There will be a preliminary family court hearing soon. Likely in the next 72 hours. I suggest you get a lawyer. I nodded. My firm said they'd help. Good, he said. You're going to need solid representation. Family court is complicated. He stood. Try to get some rest. The worst part, the unknown, is over. But as he walked away, I knew, the worst part wasn't the unknown. The worst part was knowing exactly who my family really was. I stepped out into the hallway. The storm outside the station had calmed, flakes drifting lazily past the glass. The lights reflected on the wet floor. Everything felt surreal. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. A small voice startled me. Auntie Maya? I looked up. Ella stood there, blanket wrapped around her shoulders like a cape. Jonah clung to her hand, half asleep. Daddy said we could say goodnight, she whispered. I knelt. They both fell into my arms. You saved us, Ella murmured into my coat. We knew you'd come. Jonah sniffled and rubbed his eyes. I was so cold. Something inside me broke, quietly, cleanly, and something stronger took its place. I'm here, I whispered. I'm not going anywhere. When their father came to bring them back, he paused. Maya, he said softly, I told CPS, if anything happens with custody hearings. I want you involved. The kids trust you. They feel safe with you. You've been more of a parent than. His voice cracked. He didn't finish. I nodded, overwhelmed. Whatever they need, I said. I'll be there. As they walked away, I felt something shift. Not fear. Not shame. Resolve. I stood alone in the hallway for a long moment, gathering myself. Then I took out my phone, reopened the recording app, and played my parents' voices again, quietly, just for me. This time, I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel conflict. I felt clarity. For the first time in my life, I wasn't falling back into the role they'd assigned me. For the first time, I wasn't covering for them. For the first time, I had proof. I had allies. I had choices. And I had a plan. I wasn't just going to tell the truth. I was going to build the case, brick by brick, evidence by evidence, that would finally protect Ella and Jonah from the chaos they'd been born into. The architect in me stirred. I knew how to build things. I knew how to design for strength. I knew how to create structures that could withstand pressure and weather storms. Now, I was going to build something else, a future for the kids that didn't include being used as props for social media or pawns in my parents' obsession with image. A life where truth mattered more than appearances. A family built intentionally, not inherited. And for the first time, I felt ready to fight. The preliminary custody hearing was scheduled for Monday morning, less than 72 hours after the night in the blizzard. It felt impossibly fast, but CPS said the emergency nature of the case required it. I barely slept that weekend. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ella's trembling hands, Jonah's flushed cheeks, the grainy security footage of Claire pushing them into the Uber with a glass of champagne in her hand. She had tried 3 more times to call me, once sobbing, once yelling, once in a strangely flat voice telling me I was ruining her life on purpose. I didn't answer any of them. My parents emailed me a long message about family unity and overreaction by the authorities and irreparable reputational harm. I didn't answer that either. Instead, I spent the weekend working with the attorney my firm provided, a sharp, methodical woman named Rachel O'Malley, who calmly assembled the evidence like she was laying out blueprints. "You don't have to testify today," she said, flipping through the binder she'd built. "This is a temporary hearing. The judge will evaluate the emergency situation and make a short-term ruling." "But Claire will lie," I said. "Yes," Rachel agreed. "And that's exactly why we want her to." I blinked. "What?" She tapped her pen on the binder. "Preliminary hearings are recorded. Everything she says under oath becomes part of the court record. If she lies boldly today, and we expect she will, those lies will be gold when we present the full evidence package at the formal hearing." It clicked slowly. She wanted Claire to trap herself. "Let her feel confident," Rachel said. "Let her think this is going her way. The judge won't see the footage yet. Not until the main hearing. Today is about stabilization." I nodded, my stomach twisting. When Monday morning came, the city courthouse was still half buried in snowbanks from the storm. The air burned my lungs as I climbed the stone steps, clutching a folder of documents. The courtroom itself felt like stepping into a different universe, dark wood walls, high ceilings, harsh overhead lights that gave everything a sterile tone. The judge's bench loomed like a fortress. I sat behind the children's father, Daniel, with Rachel beside me, her posture straight and deliberate. Ella and Jonah weren't present. CPS didn't want them exposed to the conflict. My parents slid into the row behind us like royalty entering a theater. Claire entered last, wearing a pale blue outfit and a halo of carefully curled hair, looking like a woman walking into a photo shoot. Her attorney, a sleek man in an expensive suit, whispered something to her that made her smile, an eerie, confident smile that didn't reach her eyes. When the judge entered, we all rose. Judge Halvorson was known for being strict, no-nonsense, unimpressed by theatrics. Her gaze cut through the room like a blade. She began with procedural remarks, then turned to Claire's lawyer. "You are requesting temporary custody to return to the mother?" she asked coolly. "Yes, Your Honor," Claire's attorney said, standing. "There was a misunderstanding with transportation. My client deeply regrets the confusion and is fully prepared to resume her maternal responsibilities." Confusion. Responsibilities. I stared at him in disbelief. Claire dabbed her eyes with a tissue she didn't need. The judge turned to Claire. "Miss Turner, do you understand you are under oath? Anything you say today is testimony." "Yes, Your Honor," Claire said in a soft, trembling voice. "Very well," the judge said. Tell me, in your own words, what happened Thursday evening. Claire inhaled dramatically. My sister agreed to watch my children while I attended an important charity function. I arranged transportation, but she must have given the Uber driver the wrong address. I felt heat rise in my chest. Judge Halvorson didn't react. She simply wrote something on her pad. Claire continued, gaining confidence with every lie. I would never put my children in danger. When I learned they weren't where they were supposed to be, I panicked. I rushed to the station. I still don't fully understand how the driver ended up in that industrial area. Her lawyer nodded approvingly. Rachel didn't move. The judge flipped a page. Ms. Turner, are you claiming you were sober when you arranged the ride? Claire nodded firmly. Yes. Entirely sober. Lie. We had footage. And your children were properly dressed for the weather? Yes, she said sweetly. It was not as cold when we left the house. Lie. And you personally entered the destination address? I entered the address my sister provided me earlier that day. Lie. 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 My hands balled into fists. I felt Rachel's hand press gently against my knee. Stay calm. Claire wasn't just lying. She was building a mansion of lies. With confidence. With practiced innocence. Under oath. And the judge was letting her. Finally, Judge Halvorson turned to CPS. Mrs. Halpern stood, her tone professional. Your Honor, the children's accounts contradict Ms. Turner's statements. They reported no agreement to visit their aunt. They were not dressed for the storm. They reported their mother was angry and drinking when leaving the house. Claire's face twitched. The judge nodded. Noted. Halpern continued, additionally, the children's father is prepared to assume temporary custody. CPS recommends this due to concerns regarding the mother's recent behavior and the potential for ongoing risk. Claire's lawyer jumped in. Your Honor, this is an overreaction. Judge Halvorson raised a hand. He fell silent. I've heard enough, she said. My breath stopped. Temporary custody will remain with the father, she ruled. Ms. Turner, you will have supervised visitation twice a week at the CPS facility. Additionally, you are required to undergo a parenting capacity evaluation and substance use assessment. Claire gasped. Your Honor, please, this is unfair. Quiet, the judge snapped. Your conduct raises significant concerns about your judgment. Until the formal hearing, this arrangement stands. Claire burst into tears, not grief tears, but frustrated, how could you do this to me tears. Her parents rushed to comfort her. The judge continued, as for Ms. Maya Turner, my heart lurched. You submitted documentation that clarifies your role. You are dismissed from any suspicion in this preliminary inquiry. However, you may be called to testify at the formal hearing. I nodded, throat tight. Yes, Your Honor. Court adjourned. The gavel struck. And it was over. Or at least, this phase was. Outside the courtroom, Claire rounded on me like a cornered animal. You did this, she shrieked, mascara streaking. You sabotaged me. You're jealous because I'm the one people care about. I stepped back instinctively, but Rachel stepped between us. We're not doing this, Rachel said calmly. Not here. This isn't over. Claire yelled, pointing at me with a shaking hand. I'm going to expose you, for what? Rachel asked coolly. Telling the truth? Claire's mouth snapped shut. My parents joined her. My mother's face was blotchy with anger, not sadness. My father's jaw was clenched so tight I thought it might crack. You should be ashamed, he hissed at me. Turning on your own sister. Airing family issues like this. Rachel slid her card into my father's suit pocket. If you threaten her career again, that's witness intimidation. I'll handle it personally. My father froze. Then, for the first time in my life, he was speechless. I turned away from them. Daniel was waiting down the hall. He approached me slowly, almost cautiously. "Thank you," he said. "For everything." I exhaled. "This isn't over." "No," he agreed. "But the kids are safe. Because of you." There was gratitude in his voice, and something like relief. "They asked for you again," he added softly. "This morning. They said you make them feel safe." My throat tightened. "I love them," I said simply. He nodded. "I know." He reached into his coat pocket and handed me a folded piece of paper. "The formal hearing is in 3 weeks. Rachel will have everything she needs. But I want you there. With us." I took the paper. Inside was a handwritten note from Ella. "Thank you, Auntie Maya, for finding us. I wasn't scared when you came. I love you." The last line was written in shaky letters by Jonah. "You my safe place." I closed my eyes. And in that moment, standing in a courthouse hallway, surrounded by echoes of lies and truth, I realized, this wasn't the destruction of my family. This was the beginning of building a new one. One defined not by blood, money, or image, but by safety, truth, choice, love. The climax wasn't the courtroom ruling. The climax was the shift inside me. I finally understood, I wasn't fighting against my family. I was fighting for the children. And maybe, for the first time in my life, for myself. 3 years later, the winter feels different. It's still cold, this city is always cold, but it no longer feels like something I'm bracing against. More like something I've learned to live with. Something I've built around, the way you design a structure to rise within a harsh climate instead of fighting it. The riverfront project, the one that almost cost me my career, stands completed now, a ribbon of public space carved through old industrial land. Where warehouses once crumbled, there's a community park with heated benches, open-air art installations, native grasses, and a long pedestrian path that curves by the water. Kids run there year-round, bundled in bright coats, their laughter carrying across the snow. Sometimes, on quiet mornings like this, I walk to the overlook pavilion I designed, the centerpiece of the entire redevelopment, and sit with a thermos of coffee, watching the city wake up. Today, I'm not alone. "Is this the angle you wanted?" Ella asks, holding up her sketchpad. She's 9 now, tall, serious, with a growing collection of colored pencils and an eye for proportions that surprises even me. I look over. She's drawn the pavilion beautifully, clean lines, soft shading, her own little notes about shadows and light. "It's perfect," I say. She smiles, shy but proud. Jonah, now 7, runs up the ramp toward us, his jacket unzipped, hat askew, waving something in his mittened hand. "Auntie Maya. Look." I beat my old time, he shouts as he jumps onto the bench beside me, breath steaming in the air. He's more confident now. Less anxious. Still sensitive, but in a softer way. He's learned that the world doesn't disappear when adults get upset. That people don't vanish when things get complicated. He learned stability. He learned safety. He learned love. Daniel arrives a moment later, carrying a paper bag that smells like warm pastries. He's not breathless like Jonah, but the cold has painted his cheeks pink. He sits across from us, handing out breakfast like it's the most natural routine in the world. Which, by now, it is. We live in the same apartment building, different floors, but close enough that dinner is shared most nights, school pickups are coordinated, and emergencies, of which there are blessedly few, feel manageable because both doors are always open. We aren't romantically entangled. It's deeper than that, in a way, an unspoken partnership built from crisis, rebuilt through trust, maintained through presence. We co-parent the kids in the ways that matter, even though they're not mine. At least, not biologically. But family isn't about biology. It's about who shows up. And who stays. Daniel takes a sip of coffee, looks over at the pavilion, and says, "You know, they still talk about how this project transformed the district. The mayor mentioned your name again last week." I shrug lightly. Good design helps. But it was really the community that made it work. He shakes his head. "You're too modest." Ella nudges me gently. "Daddy's right." I smile at her. A gust of wind blows snow across the walkway, swirling in soft spirals. The kids laugh and try to catch the flakes in their hands. And somewhere in all that sound, I hear echoes of a different night, sirens, alarms, shivering breaths, fluorescent lights. Those memories don't hurt anymore. They feel distant, like old scaffolding taken down after a building finally stands on its own. Claire lost parental rights 18 months after the initial incident. By then, the evidence was overwhelming: my email, the home footage, her under-oath lies, her repeated failures during supervised visits. CPS reports from another state surfaced later, and then a second alcohol-related incident sealed the fate she'd spent years creating for herself. She moved away afterward. Tried a fresh start somewhere warm. Her social media fizzled. Her relationships crumbled. Consequences followed her, as they always do, eventually. My parents drifted too. When their attempts to manipulate the narrative failed, when the truth became too public, too undeniable, they withdrew. Out of shame, or resentment, or both. I stopped expecting apologies. Distance became our version of peace. And peace, real peace, feels like this morning: coffee steaming in the cold, kids laughing, a city growing safer and kinder in small, deliberate ways. Jonah presses something into my hand. A small metal keychain. A tiny engraved word, home. I look at him. "It's for you," he says softly. "Because you gave us home again." My chest tightens, not with pain, but with something warm and steady. I clip it onto my bag. "Thank you," I whisper. The four of us sit there a moment longer, watching the sun rise over the riverfront I helped create, over a city rebuilt in pieces, over a life rebuilt on truth. This is my family now. Not perfect. Not traditional. But chosen. Safe. Real. And that is enough. If you like this story, feel free to subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next one.